right? Maybe you stop it just by knocking on a door, making a phone call. So I kind of chuckled when I was like, oh my God, the agent's doing like three different jobs. And I get that because sometimes it does happen, but the, the Secret Service has beefed up their intelligence division.
They definitely have. Yeah. And like I said, there were at least two or three other agents that were involved in looking into the Cubans in the hotel room, which was real. And there were four of them. Two, they only got two of them. Four, the other two got away, or they may have been in position that day. We don't know.
Right.
But it's funny when you're from the writing perspective of something like this. If you I found that if you make it too expansive, then, and especially if it's in a shorter work, people get confused about who's doing what and what
Too
cops
many
do.
names. Yeah, too many names. Yeah.
Too many names and that kind of stuff. So you're absolutely right. And I know, yeah, they did have people that were dedicated strictly to just following up on threats, both and also in the Chicago PD as well. But like for something like this, I just figured I had to keep it lean, otherwise it would get mean really quick.
Yeah, no, that's true. Did you when you were doing some of your research, did you so I don't know if you're from the Chicago area, did you go up there? Did you run the routes? Did you see the buildings and stuff?
I did on a previous trip several years ago because this is always stuck in my mind. I said, wow, it could have worked. Yeah, it did. Because there weren't a lot of people talking about it. But as I've said in other podcasts, I love the fringe stuff, looking into things like Bigfoot, aliens,
It's good
ancient
stories
aliens.
there, right? Yeah.
There's some great stories, and I've never come away from them convinced that they were anything but explainable. Nothing. I even remember a few years ago there was in the UFO community the flying rods. Well, they wound
Yeah.
up being drones that they didn't tell anybody about. So they were predator drones. That was it. But when it came to the Kennedy stuff, I always tried to look at the actual places so I could get a sense as to what was real. Because you see it in black and white, or you see a documentary. It doesn't help seeing that if you can go into the real world and take a look at it.
Yeah,
And,
and actually, yeah, walk it or drive it or see it for yourself. Yeah, it just it grounds you a little bit too. Just as an agent, when you see what it's not my history, but it's the history of the Secret Service.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, it grounds you. One of the interesting things that as I was reading your story, you made a point about the Chicago. Chicago would have like counter snipers, but they wouldn't be able to cover all the windows. So, like I was talking about how the Secret Service learns from that. So the Secret Service has its own counter sniper division,
Yeah.
guys who are elite, who are trained by military snipers, and they go through some really amazing training. And so, depending on the situation, depending on the location, you can have multiple teams of counter snipers covering everything. So like like when I was reading that story and you were mentioning how it was someone in the story mentioned like you won't be able to cover all those windows. There'd just be too many.
Right.
Today that doesn't happen. Right
Right.
now, all those windows would be covered. And so, like, if the window pops open and they see a barrel of a gun, or if there was a true sniper, that wouldn't happen, obviously. But if they were to see that, immediately take action.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I had volunteered in government politics for many years, and I wound up learning that fact firsthand during the Dole campaign when he had Secret Service protection, and those guys were pretty uh, capable. And that
Yeah.
was back then. And then I ran into them again after George Bush was the nominee, and then he became president. It was interesting to see how they worked, and I was able to see it from behind the scenes a little bit. But then only a couple of years ago, my wife and I were in DC, and we were walking into the Willard one winter morning, and we literally ran into two people who were counter snipers coming out of the Willard
With their bags. Yep.
with their bags. And I was like, Jesus Christ, those are rifles and they're huge. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and those
And
guys had an air about them too. You knew that they were not there just collecting for the Red Cross.
so yeah. So the Secret Service, has all those special teams now. They have the counter sniper. They have the counter assault team, which is a quick reaction force. They call them CAT.
Mm-hmm.
It's government, so they love their acronyms.
They do. Alphabet soup.
So counter sniper, CS, OCS is, and I love their code names. I don't know if you I don't know if that stuff is out on the internet.
Yeah,
But the code
that
names
was
are
good.
cool. But then there's a whole host of things that the Secret Service doesn't talk about, um, or doesn't acknowledge exist. Or some very specialized units,
Yes.
um, that go hand in hand with those other specialized units.
Yeah, specialized units, you do not want to find yourself the center of their attention or best efforts because they are very capable individuals.
They are. I always say, I got to serve with the best, the brightest, and the most highly trained people that this country has to offer. And some of the
Mhm.
people they come from diverse backgrounds with the Secret Service. As opposed to like the FBI, and I'll knock on the FBI a little bit. They always want lawyers and accountants. The Secret Service likes to take a whole bunch of different people from
Right.
different backgrounds. And the reason they want that is they want that diversity of opinion, is that when they're coming up with a security plan for a visit, they want people not to all think exactly the same. They want
Right.
people to think outside of the box, to be cliche,
I
and
know.
come up with ways, where there are that our adversaries could exploit holes in our security plan. And if you're all lawyers and you're all accountants and you're all trained the same way and you all think the same way and you all come from the same background, you're going to come up with the same solution. We don't want the
Right.
same solution that can be exploited. And so you'll have, like, a lot of people in my when I was hired, you have a training academy class. Some were
Mhm.
teachers, some were marketing people, some were cops, some were law enforcement, some were in the military. But you have this breadth of diverse opinions, backgrounds, and it just goes to enhance, what the Secret Service does and has done.
Yeah, I witnessed that firsthand because I was an intern when they were having a presidential visit, and I knew the location where they were going to be having an event. I knew the room. I'd run several of the events there, and even though I was only a 20-year-old college student, I knew it. And they asked me to be part of their walkthrough of that particular room. And I figured, what did the guy from the hotel will be there? They're not going to listen to me. But they kept asking me, how's this going to work? Where what do you think? What have we missed? And I said, well, this was in the Sheridan. It's still there on in Midtown. I said, well, there is a projection room up there that looks right down on the stage. They didn't know about that. And
Yeah.
they said, oh, and they sent somebody up there and they popped it open and they said, Jesus, yeah, look at this. And they thanked me for telling them about it, and they had someone on it. So it was that speaks to your what you just said, that they do take in all different ideas when they're doing something like
You
this.
have to, otherwise you end up failing. So if there was a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu sitting on the beach. This is going back years, and there's a picture, and his security guys are like right on top of him, and so he's sitting there. The PM of Israel sitting there on the beach with his wife, and it's a beautiful day, and his guys are right on top of him. And the Secret Service, like, if those guys have to react, the Secret Service have already failed. Even if the principal, the protectee, doesn't get hurt, because it should
Right.
never get to that point. And so there's these layers of security. You have this outer ring, you have a middle ring, you have an inner ring. That inner ring, if that inner ring gets penetrated, oh, that means all those other outer rings have been penetrated. That means there's a complete failure. Um, and so the physical protection is what everybody sees,
Right.
right? The guys in the sunglasses and the earpieces walking next to the president, the vice president, or whatever. But it's all the security plan and the people that are standing in the spots that are preventing, or stopping, adversaries from exploiting, the security plan or whatnot. So you have your magnetometers, you have your post stander standing in the stairwell or next to the garbage chute, or people
Right.
in the building across the street roaming the hallways, looking at windows and people out on the street, walking amongst the crowds and looking for things that are just out of place.
Hmm.
And so the Secret Service trains you to look for those things that are just out of place, give you that spidey tingle.
Right. So, Chris, I know we've been talking about my novella, but you've got a lot of interesting stuff going on with your writing career. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going to be coming up for you?
So right now I'm writing, historical fiction, still with the Secret Service. And the Secret Service was created in 1865, so I go back to its roots
Mm.
around, it's the era of Reconstruction. And so I have an agent, and the book is currently out on submission. It's tentatively titled The Hunt for Ulysses. It's a plot where it's an assassination plot of Ulysses S. Grant that starts off as a counterfeit investigation in New York City.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we're out on submission right now. Cross fingers. Usually don't like to talk about being out on submission, but it is. And
Okay.
we'll see what happens with that. And I'm currently writing the follow up to it, so I'm in the middle of that as well.
That's great. Yeah, it's always important to once you have something out there and you have faith in it, why not write the second book in the series? Because if I am a firm believer that it creates momentum in terms of energy somewhere in the universe. So
Yep.
important.
Yeah. And plus, I love the characters and I like the
Right.
story. And so, why not? Just,
Why not? Exactly
yeah.
right. Now, if people want to keep track of your career and what's happening next, what's the best way that they can do that? Social media, your website, things like
Yeah,
that.
sure. You can go to cealbanese.com. I also co-host the Crew Reviews. It's a
Right.
podcast where we interview authors. Although we haven't done too many interviews lately, just real life getting in the way. But you can go
Sure.
to thecrewreviews.com, and I'm really active on Twitter or X. That's the place where I usually interact with people. So you can find me on there at CE_Albanese.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it for you guys inviting me to come and talk about it and sending me the story, man. I loved it.
Thank you, pal. Thank you so much.